You know Batman as Gotham's protector. But what if I told you he's more than just a superhero? What if Batman is actually a modern-day Stoic philosopher? A man who endures suffering not just because he has to, but because he chooses to? How does he endure unimaginable pain without breaking? Why does he refuse revenge when it's the easier path? And what ancient wisdom drives his every action? By the end of this video, you'll see Batman not as a vigilante, but as a warrior of discipline, a master of his mind, and a true Stoic philosopher in action. For over 2,000 years, Stoicism has been a guide for warriors, kings, and philosophers. It teaches a simple but powerful truth: control what you can, accept what you can't, and master your emotions to live with purpose. No modern character embodies this more than Bruce Wayne. From the moment he lost his parents to the moment he became the Batman, his life has been shaped by suffering. But instead of being destroyed by it, he used it as fuel. But here's where it gets interesting. Batman doesn't just practice Stoicism, he lives by it. And in this video, we'll break down 6 core Stoic principles that define his life, and what we can learn from them. Let's start with the foundation of his philosophy. Fear, anger, grief. These emotions destroy men. But Bruce Wayne masters them in a way few can understand. From the moment he watched his parents die in that alley, emotions threatened to consume him. Yet, he chose a different path. Think about it. A boy who had every right to seek revenge, to let rage define him. Instead, he learned something profound in those mountains with the League of Shadows. He discovered that true power isn't in expressing anger, but in controlling it. When Ra's al Ghul presents him with a criminal, demands justice through death, Bruce makes a choice. Not driven by the screaming voices of vengeance in his head, but by a principle bigger than his pain. This isn't weakness. It's the ultimate display of power. The power to choose reason over rage. But here's where Batman's journey gets fascinating. What happens when an unstoppable force like the Joker pushes these emotional barriers to their breaking point? When the very control that makes him powerful becomes a wall between him and humanity. This brings us to our second principle, one that explains why Batman doesn't just fight crime. He wages a war on chaos itself. A principle that reveals how he maintains control when everything around him is falling apart. In a city drowning in corruption, where crime lords rule the streets and politicians fill their pockets, most would surrender to despair. But Batman? He understands a fundamental truth that separates warriors from victims. Focus only on what you can control. Think about Gotham's endless cycle of corruption. A lesser man would waste energy cursing the system, blaming society, or seeking shortcuts through violence. But Bruce Wayne learned something profound from the ancient Stoics. You can't control the ocean, but you can master your ship. Every night, he faces an impossible choice. Gotham's problems are too vast for one man to solve. Yet instead of being paralyzed by the enormity of it all, he focuses on what's in front of him. One crime at a time. One life saved at a time. One small victory that ripples through the darkness. When Rachel tells him, justice is about harmony. Revenge is about making yourself feel better. She unknowingly echoes the Stoic principle that guided him all along. He accepts this truth and never seeks revenge. But here's where things get interesting. What happens when an unstoppable force like Bane shows Batman that some things truly are beyond his control? This leads us to our third principle, one that reveals how Batman turns his greatest defeats into his most powerful victories. Pain isn't just a part of Batman's journey, it's his teacher. When Bane breaks not just his body but his spirit, throwing him into that underground prison, we see the true essence of Stoic resilience. Most would break. Batman chooses to rebuild. In that pit of despair, stripped of his wealth, his gadgets, his very identity, Bruce Wayne discovers the raw truth about strength. It's not about having advantages, it's about thriving when you have none. Every failed attempt to climb out isn't just a physical defeat. It's a lesson in humility, a test of will, a forge for something stronger. Watch how he approaches each attempt. No shortcuts, no self-pity, just pure, unwavering discipline. The other prisoners tell him to use the rope for safety. But Bruce knows, true growth comes only when you're willing to risk everything, when you embrace the fall as much as the climb. This isn't just about physical recovery. It's about something deeper. Each time he falls, he's not just building muscle, he's building resolve. The rope isn't just a safety line, it's a crutch. And Batman? He chooses the harder path, always. But here's what makes this principle truly fascinating. What if Batman's greatest strength, his ability to endure endless suffering, is actually his greatest weakness? This leads us to our fourth principle, where we discover how this warrior balances discipline with humanity. In a world where the Joker spreads chaos and criminals run rampant, Batman's most powerful weapon isn't his strength, his gadgets, or even his training. It's his code. One rule that defines everything: no killing, ever. But this isn't just a simple moral choice. It's a philosophical battle that tests him every night. Imagine facing the Joker, knowing he's killed hundreds, knowing he'll kill again. The easiest path is clear: end him, save countless lives. But Batman understands something deeper about morality that even his allies sometimes question. His code isn't about what's easy, it's about what's right. And sometimes, what's right is the hardest path of all. Watch how he handles each confrontation. Every time he has the Joker at his mercy, every time vengeance is within grasp, he chooses restraint. Not because he's weak, but because true strength lies in maintaining your principles when they're tested most severely. This code costs him dearly. Rachel's death, Harvey's fall, countless lives lost because he wouldn't cross that line. Yet he endures, knowing that breaking his code wouldn't just end a life, it would end everything Batman stands for. But here's the question that haunts every decision. Is his unbreakable code protecting Gotham, or is it enabling its worst criminals to thrive? This brings us to our fifth principle, where we discover how Batman bears the weight of these impossible choices. When Harvey Dent falls, when Gotham's White Knight becomes its darkest villain, Batman faces a choice that defines true Stoic wisdom: accept fate or fight against it. Most heroes would try to clear their name, to tell the truth about Harvey's crimes. But Batman sees a deeper truth. Sometimes, fate demands sacrifice. The ancient Stoics had a phrase for this: amor fati, love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, but embracing it as if you had chosen it. Watch how Batman doesn't just accept blame for Harvey's crimes, he embraces it fully. He understands that Gotham needs its symbol of hope more than it needs the truth. Every pursuit by the police, every cry of murderer from the citizens he protects, he accepts it all. Not with resignation, but with purpose. Because sometimes the role fate assigns us isn't the one we wanted, but the one we need to play. This isn't martyrdom, it's strategic acceptance of a higher purpose. For 8 years, he carried this burden. Bruce Wayne disappears. Batman becomes a villain. But Gotham keeps its hope. He sacrifices everything: his legacy, his symbol, his very identity, for something greater than himself. But here's what makes this principle truly devastating. What happens when fate demands not just your reputation, but your life itself? This leads us to our final principle, where we discover the ultimate price of being Batman. Unlike other billionaire superheroes who flaunt their wealth, Bruce Wayne understands a fundamental Stoic truth. True power comes from detachment. While Tony Stark builds monuments to himself, Batman treats his fortune as merely a tool for his mission. His billion-dollar empire, just a means to an end. Watch how he lives in Wayne Manor. Yes, it's a mansion, but it's not filled with luxuries. It's a base of operations. His garage isn't stuffed with sports cars for show. Each vehicle serves a purpose. Even his public persona as a playboy billionaire is just another mask, a calculated disguise that brings him no real pleasure. This isn't about being ascetic, it's about freedom through detachment. When Bane destroys his fortune, Bruce doesn't break. When he needs to fake his death and walk away from his empire, he does it without hesitation. Because he never defined himself by his wealth, he defined himself by his mission. In the end, he gives everything away. His home becomes an orphanage, his company transitions to new leaders, and Bruce Wayne dies so Batman's legacy can live. No golden parachute, no backup plan, no safety net. But here's the ultimate question. In detaching from everything that makes him Bruce Wayne, has Batman become nothing more than a symbol? A ghost in a mask? This brings us to our final reflection on what it truly means to be Batman. 6 principles that define not just a superhero, but a philosophy. Batman isn't just fighting criminals, he's waging a war against his own human nature. Every night, he chooses discipline over emotion, control over chaos, purpose over comfort. Through mastering his emotions, he turned trauma into strength. By focusing on what he could control, he found power in life's darkest moments. When facing impossible odds, he embraced hardship as a teacher. His unbreakable moral code became his compass. His acceptance of fate became his shield. And his detachment from wealth became his freedom. But perhaps Batman's greatest lesson isn't in his victories, it's in his sacrifices. Every principle tested him, every choice cost him. Yet he endured, not because he had to, but because he chose to. In the end, Batman shows us that being a hero isn't about having power. It's about having principles. But there's one final question we need to ask. What if Batman's greatest strength, his unwavering dedication to these Stoic principles, is actually his greatest weakness? What happens when a man becomes so committed to his philosophy that he loses touch with his humanity? Join me in my next video where we'll explore the dark side of Batman's Stoicism and why the very principles that make him a hero might also be his downfall. If you found this analysis interesting, hit that like button and subscribe. Let me know in the comments, what other characters should we analyze through the lens of philosophy? This is Silver Screen Stoics, and remember, in the words of Batman himself, it's not who you are underneath, but what you do that defines you.